It's always like touch this. Welcome to another episode of this unnamed as of yet podcast about dystopian sci-fi films in the era of coronavirus 19. This week we watched Slaughthouse 5, the film adaptation of the very famous novel by the very famous Kurt Vonnegut. Definitely a fan favourite around these parts. The film is set around Second World War, most prominently the bombing of Dresden, which I'm led to believe is still to this day a much debated event in terms of the justification for the bombing, because it was like a civilian town. And I think Kurt maybe was in World War II himself. I could be totally wrong in
Either
that.
one or two.
I think
can't remember
he did have a lot of stuff to express about his kind of.
He definitely was in a war. I actually don't know which one.
Fuck, we're idiots. But no, I think he had a lot to say about war in his kind of like fun-poking, satirical, like black humor way, which comes through a lot in this book. Like it was quite well known for its sort of anti-war stance. Anyway, we're not really talking about the book today. We're talking about the movie. Although we're also talking about the story. That the movie portrays. The narrative. Yes. Initial thoughts.
I like, just off the top, I enjoyed the film, but I certainly think that like it ties itself up quite nicely at the end, but like it's a bit too jumpy before you recognize that like some sort of like intergalactic sort of god species of alien has kind of lives in a like a predetermined sort of world. So it's like
it's very jumpy.
Yeah,
I get, but it is by design jumpy, I guess.
Well,
you can give him a little hall pass.
No, yeah, certainly. I think it translated better in the novel, I think, than watching it.
True. I guess because you expect novels to sometimes jump from different like
I think
scenarios.
The
like
level
that.
of like reader permission is higher. Like people, I think, would be a lot happier to read something that jumps around.
I guess the film is confusing as well because it's not like it's jumping from scene to scene. It's jumping from the same main character in a different like time and place, and it's just like, okay, are these connected? Are these different like universes? What's going on?
I guess the two biggest points that I thought of when watching this, the first thing is how much it reminds me, and I never connected this before, but with Arrival, that film. I think that's very similar, and that sort of connects to my second point, which is like the philosophy of like determinism. Like it's the same in Arrival. And it's the same because they have like an alien race that has like, or an alien species or something that has the structure of their, being is like fourth dimensional. And that's why time is like, isn't linear, but like is condensed altogether.
Yeah, because the Traumalfordorians, they just, like all time is just one thing. And like, I do like that kind of philosophical argument, I guess, posed by Vonnegut initially about how death doesn't matter because it's death is only like it's a time-based concept. They argue that you're always alive in the past. The past is arguing
like,
that the past always does
retroactive.
exist, like, and always will exist because in a way, like. Time is just like one thing. Yeah,
just like a block.
Yeah.
All like smushed together.
It's all relative,
rather than a thread or whatever. Yeah, it's relative, exactly. But I think this is my major problem with the book and the movie and that sort of philosophy as well, is that like it starts to become like nothing really matters. Because the Traumalfordorians at the end are
like nihilistic?
Not necessarily even that. It's just like super like anti-interventionist a little bit.
It did get pretty heavily criticised for nihilistic sort of postures.
You could call it that, but I think that like I don't know. I don't know if I'd call it nihilism, but it's a certain sense of like, because there's a scene at the end where it's like it's not your world that ends, it's the entire galaxy, and it's done by some dude who pressed a button.
Making a machine or something.
Making a machine or fueling something. And then Billy replies like, or if you know that, then why don't you stop it? It's like, well, it's already been done and it will be done, and like it has to be done. It's just like, it's a pretty bullshit way of saying that. It's just like, my hands are tied, like, you know, because obviously that's not the case.
Depends how deep we want to go on this, I get, but like, well, what do you think of free will then? Like,
I think that, like, I don't know whether or not like the notion of free will, as it's like commonly understood, is really the case. I think there's tons of like levels of mediation that everyone goes through. Like, you have choices, you know, and choices are usually like that's how you consider freedom, by having a choice. You know, it's like with Kant, how it's like, oh, you need the moral law because then you can think outside of it. But if you didn't have it, then there's no like structure to it. But in this case, it's like there's no point in the freedom, you know, like so the other one is like, free will is like not really being free, but having the choice to be able to make, like, being able to make decisions. You know what I mean? Like, whereas this is like,
well,
the decisions are already made.
My stance is kind of like the whole concept of philosophizing about free will and thinking about it. It's a very human thing.
Oh yeah.
And like, we don't really know, like, the question itself is slightly meaningless in that I would argue that we don't have free will in the traditional sense, like, like, because I believe in determinism, I guess, but we feel enough like we have it that I don't care that we maybe, like, you know, if we break down to like first principles of physics or something, maybe we don't have it, but in like, you get to feel like you do enough in your life that believing that you didn't have it would only cause you pain, basically. Like, if you know, if you wanted to be like just depressed and like meaningless life, like, oh, I don't have free will, nothing means anything, so I'm just going to do nothing. Like, well, you can do that, but that's not going to be very fun. So I might as well just like...
Well, I guess it's like the perspective changes everything, right? Like the way you're oriented towards the notion of free will. Like I agree. I think that there probably isn't such a thing as free will, but the fact that there's a structure in which you can think it must mean that, like, you know, you have the choice. You do, you don't, you might not, you mightn't. And so
like, and
that is free will, right?
I think Vonnegut's stance would be similar.
You think so? I don't know. This sort of strikes me
as... Because I don't think see him as like a negative writer, even though he liked to satirize and kind of like poke fun at convention, especially like religious convention and stuff like that. But I see him as kind of hopeful. Yeah. Even though it's a bleak... There's a lot of interpretation to the book and the story because it's bleak in like all the Tralfamadorians always like, and so it goes. You know, they say it like 60 times or something in the book. Whenever someone dies or like a bunch of people die, like they're just like, and so it goes. That could be interpreted as like, who gives a shit? Yeah. But it's more like them saying, don't despair over death. And that's kind of what Billy's speech is saying, not to jump right to the end already, but like, because Billy, that's his speech, he's saying like, if you mourn my death, then you haven't understood a word I've said. That kind of main point that he makes. I guess, I don't know, like, I guess his life back at home, like when he gets out of the army, is very like, he's just following the rules, you know. He's like, he gets married when he's the optometrist and
as
stuff.
A child, is like sort of connected somehow with like his father-in-law, who must be doing some sort of business or politics, because
I think his father-in-law is like on the board of optometrists or something like that, and he gets him the job. And
one of my favorite things was like his wife was constantly like, no, I have a reason to go on that diet.
I love that. She says like 5 times. She's like, she's like 45 at one point. She's like, I'm going to really lose weight this time, Billy.
You bought me this new car. Like, I don't know. Like, her character is very interesting. But it seems it's all very like conventional. His life. It seems like he kind of was just like,
Well, yeah, that seemed purposeful.
Yeah.
On that I was thinking like they do that, and there's a scene where someone's making a speech and the words are the same, and it's like they're in the war, and I think it's coming up, but like they're in the war and they're also here, and there's like, and the words it jump cuts back and forth, and it's just contrasting like the mundane everyday well-to-do life with the kind of the war life, like when they're kind of a little bit up shit creek and they're like, no, it's going to be okay, we're going to get some shelter in Dresden, blah blah blah. So it was a good like contrast of the everyday mundane and then war. Yeah,
more of a survival lifestyle, because they're like POWs at that point. But I love the bit where, and we just saw it then, where the Montana Wildhack, is that her name? Is that the character's name?
Something Wildhack, yeah. Go with that.
I feel like it's Montana. I remember thinking like how like Bond name it almost sounded. Like, where she...
you're right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Where she gets like half naked in the film scene.
Yeah.
And he's just sitting there just like, yeah. And his kids are behind him and it's like, oh, I really love this. And his daughter's like, that's disgusting. And he's just not saying anything.
Yeah.
It's the same when he catches his son masturbating. It's just like, you don't need to do that. We have friends downstairs. And just takes the magazine and is just like looking through it. He's like, yeah, it's pretty lit.
Yeah, he loves it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I guess then either like he was already somewhat aware of the fact that they're going to be getting together at some point. So he's kind of just enjoying her image retroactively without like being able to be with her. He's just like, oh yeah, this is good. This is satisfying me somehow.
I feel like, because, you know, the whole unstuck in time element, it's like an interesting narrative element that can be
Isn't
used
it from Shakespeare?
well. You'd know better than I would for that.
I want to say that like unstuck in time or something like that.
I think he kind of used it to stress like PTSD and not being able to like escape a painful memory, like it haunts you in that way. But it wasn't made super explicit in the book or the film.
Well, I guess you can't really come directly at that, can you?
Well, I guess like modern films that are really heavy-handed would just like do jump cuts, like flashback
or,
sort
like,
of
wake
style,
up,
where
he's
he's
like,
just like he's getting grenades thrown at him or something. Like they would be really heavy-handed with that and be like, he's got PTSD in case you didn't know. Like, whereas this is more just like a bit more psychological because it's not as obvious. It's like, is he time traveling or is he just in a memory? Like,
the film affects you. Yeah, certainly. It doesn't tell you. It gets you to have to think about it.
And I think that's, it's just something that Vonnegut likes to kind of remind you, like, there's no rules in writing novels. Like, you know, it doesn't have to follow a timeline that makes sense. Not everything has to make perfect sense in the artistic
and then once you do it,
and that's why he
made
can
sense
have,
of it.
Yeah,
right?
so he'll have like real world elements in the books, and then he'll also have like, say, like, you know, the novelist that might actually be kind of like a representation of Kurt in the real world. In his novels, and then that guy will come up in different novels, and it's kind of like it's a connected universe, but it doesn't make perfect sense.
I think it certainly does have like there are connections. I think one of the funniest scenes is just before the bombing of Dresden. The colonel is like, oh, it's time to ally with the Russians or something. It's like, it's time to ally with the Germans against the Russians. And then when they're in the bunker, when the bombs are dropping, he says something really strange. He's like, oh no, it's the Americans. No, it's this. Like, there's just like this total switch in like the space of like 5 minutes, where it's just like 4 or 5 different enemies collapse into one. And it's crazy, hey.
Another interesting point. Well, because I was reading about Dresden after watching it, and it's so similar to today in that heaps of misinformation about the death toll. Like, it's still like debated, like how many people died, and like the figures vary wildly. And at the time, especially, it was just like, oh no, it's like 30 people, and then people were like, no, it's like 5,000 people. And it's just like,
fuck, that's heaps, yeah. There's a big discrepancy between those two numbers.
Well, it seems like it's almost in all human disasters or crises, there's always like debates and propaganda and misinformation around the death toll because like everyone's got an agenda of like to say less or more people died.
Yeah, I think it's the same with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I'm pretty sure they were supposed to send them some information beforehand, but then someone was just like, nah, fuck it, let's just like bomb these people.
I guess at least with that, maybe the Americans don't deny how bad it was. Like I think that one they were kind of like, yeah, we fucked up. Like,
it's but I think that they were also just like, we did finish World War II. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, like that's like under their breath, kind of like off the record. Like,
I think on one hand they're like, yeah, it wasn't the best move. On the other hand, they're like, did stop the Japanese. It's a bad time in Japan.
That leads actually to. Well, because I was thinking, and again, relating to the real world event of Dresden, and it was kind of, and I think it kind of is reflected in the film. People call it a war crime, which is an interesting concept. Like the fact that if you're in a war, you're sort of already post morality and crime.
There are laws to the war, though.
I know. Like, we have the Geneva Convention and all that stuff. But it's like... But we're in a war. And so, like, how many war crimes go unreported in the history of time?
If it was America...
Exactly.
And all their undeclared wars.
So it's like... The whole concept of a war crime is, like, a futile sort of means of policing. Like, if you're in a war, then, like... Terrible stuff is already going to happen, like under the radar. And
that's
like,
true. But it's
we have this term to call stuff out, but it's like the war is the crime. Like,
and I guess I kind of to that end as well. It's sort of funny that war's inevitable. We might as well put some rules around it rather than just like
that's true. No, that's true.
War.
That is true. Like it's like.
I don't necessarily think that war is inevitable. Above. I don't know whether or not that's the case. I wouldn't argue that, but I would, however, I think it's funny that it was kind of once like they have rules, it's like it is instituted as an inevitability then, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. So you could argue like, well, at least we have some rules because it's inevitable, or you could argue that because we have the rules, we're more likely to enter into war. It's
exactly.
like, oh, it won't be that bad. Like,
Well, I mean, some of the things that like you can't do. Probably pretty good, there's no like insect warfare, no like hectic chemical attacks and stuff like that. I mean, it still happens, but more and more you sort of see that being the ground of like cults and fundamentalist groups like that. Is it Omriki Shin or something, that Japanese cult that put the sarin gas in the subway systems?
Damn.
Supposed to kill all these people. It didn't end up going on. I think there was like ventilation systems or something, But like that's more like those sorts of like nerve agents and stuff is more the purview of like people who are just out and out wanting to kill. Whereas war seems to look to attempt. I guess it might not be the case at all. It seems to be like just the institution of power. Like chemical weapons are kind of just like, oh fuck it, no one's winning in this.
Yeah.
But I like how they dressed him up in like a coat and silver boots and stuff as well. Kind of almost like a David Bowie looking figure.
Yeah, I guess that helps like exemplify his character because he doesn't really care. He's unaffected by like, because they were trying to make him look stupid and like to laugh at him, but he's just like whatever. Like,
he's like, I got the boots, I got the coat, I'm good. Like,
I found it was almost sexist. I'm the last person to call out something for being sexist, but how bad she was at driving.
But
then if she's never driven, which a lot of women hadn't in that time, then she's not exceptionally bad. She's just like a person who hasn't driven a car before and doesn't know how to drive a car, and she's like freaking out. So
I don't even know if that's the case. I think the case is just like in the face of some like massive cataclysm, so what do I do? How do I drive? I can't accept it.
But she was exceptionally bad.
Oh, she was, but like she was also like hysterical.
Yeah.
But like, her dad died in the plane crash. Her husband's on like life support or whatever. He does turn out to be fine, but like, like she's driving. She's like, gotta get to my husband, but like, she gets her husband, she has to actually confront the issue. So it's like, I'm just going to drive crazy around, and she ends up dying through like carbon monoxide.
Well, because that guy's saying the exhaust is broken. So I think maybe on those cars, maybe it was a known thing. Like if the exhaust breaks, then it feeds back into the actual cab. I don't know.
Maybe that was like her way of having to deal with like this like traumatic event. She was just like, no, I'm just going to wild out.
I like how the trial from adorers say, "Are you mating yet?"
Yeah, what's the deal with that? Like, do they get pleasure out of it, or like, is she a porn star or an actress, or
it's kind of both? She's kind of like on the fringes of both. I think
an erotic actress.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess it was a bit out of character for these supposedly like supreme fourth dimensional beings who don't care about like death and time, and then they're like, but they want to study like humans mating.
They might not even study it. They might just get some thrill out of it.
It was like a game show. They have like clapping and stuff.
I mean, have you ever had like mice or like rats or any sort of birds, any pet in the multiple, and seen them have sex? You kind of watch. You're just like,
that's true.
What the fuck are you doing? Like, even like,
but they kind of place themselves as like post biological life.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if they knew that everything was going to happen, and they're very like hands off about like the way time moves, and
it seems out of character that they have an interest in like something like reproduction when they don't care about death or time.
Yeah, well, I guess the cycle of like death and rebirth and stuff. Maybe to them, birth is just crazy. Because it is sort of like to get to being pregnant is already like a little bit of a job. So. That's sort of, even if they knew that like, this person's going to be pregnant, it's like, how's this all going down? Like maybe the enjoyment's in the details of it. It's like, I want to see how these people got together. But I don't know. Yeah. What's this? I want to know the Christianity beef.
Yeah. Well, I can understand it. I think it's because Billy he's like an altar boy or what is he say? He's a
he's like a military priest or something.
Yeah.
Which I had no idea they had. That seems like a very unnecessary aspect of the war effort.
So yeah, it was banned. It's been banned multiple times from school libraries in the US. In 1972, the circuit judge described the book as depraved, immoral, psychotic, vulgar, and anti-Christian.
Maybe this is a particularly American style of God.
That American Christianity kind of thing. Yeah,
because I mean, like...
Well, it is interesting. Yeah, so the US Supreme Court considered the First Amendment implications of the removal of the book.
What's the First Amendment? The
freedom of speech thing, and they concluded that local school boards may not remove books from school library shelves simply because they dislike the ideas contained in those books and seek, by their removal, to prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion. That's interesting because I feel like that's a very
different America.
Well, yeah, I don't think they would say that today. I think they're more. I think it's true. They censor speech more strongly in schools today than universities.
Yeah, I mean, like, it depends. There certainly is like a school of thought, a strain of thought in like unis and stuff that is kind of like policing other people, but that doesn't really go any further than that. Like, it is a thing, but like more and more people recognize that like what the difference between saying ridiculous is and isn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think, like,
but maybe less so in America than they should.
Potentially.
Like they're very prone to hysterical kind of culture stuff, and
America
they love
is a hysterical place.
Dramatize things.
Certainly. Yeah. They're all like flashpoint people now. You say one thing and instantly the other person's like, you're attacking me. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just this like idea or whatever. It's like, you have offended me.
So, in 2011, The novel was banned at the Republic High School in Missouri. And then the Kurt Vonnegut Memorial Library countered by offering 100 free copies of the novel to Republic High School students.
Yeah, I mean, like, I remember someone talking to me about how 1984 used to be taught in schools and how it's a shame that it's not anymore. And I don't know whether or not that claim was real or not. I don't know
It used to be taught in schools?
Yeah. I don't know if that's the case at all. This person could have been talking shit, but I was just like...
It is kind of essential reading. It's just like, it's a good book.
Oh, it's a good book, yeah, certainly.
Regardless of the real world implications, like, it's a good book.
Yeah, but the school stuff, like, it's like, it doesn't matter, because, like, you know, it's not going to be radical what they permit anyway. Schools aren't, like, places of radicality. Schools are just, like, the vestiges of, like, army and factory workers.
It depends how Christian they are, largely, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's sort of funny that, like, a Christian school, like, wanted to ban a book. Like, it's just like, well, that's sort of what you're getting into if you're, like, send your kids to a Christian school, you know. And then they're like, what, you don't let people do this? It's like, of course they fucking don't. They believe in God. Like, you know, like... Yeah.
So, yeah, well, any book where, like, it's promoting homosexuality or something like that, then...
Yeah, or it might just not be, like, pathologizing heterosexuality, you know, like...
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go. Like, I think that the more and more people try to institute, like, heterosexual relationships, the more people are going to be like, but what's the other one? What's the other thing? You know, like, because you can't think one sexuality and not think, like, the spectrum itself. You know what I mean? Like, so if anything, I feel Christianity and, like, Christian schools, private schools or whatever, do, like, a really good job of making the least Christian people. Because, like, I think one of the things I always think about Christian schools is how porny all the, like, uniforms are. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Not really for the guys, but for the girls.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think even now, like, if you were to, like, look up, like, school, I don't know, like a porno that's set in a school or something, that sounds kind of sus now that I think about it. Like,
yeah, you're too old for that.
Well, not me, but I'm just like, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm just like, oh, that's weird that they have that. Because I feel like, because I went to a hotel once, and I didn't realize this, but it was a love hotel at the time.
All right.
Yeah. And there was, like, all sorts of sex toys that you could get, but there were also sets of clothes, like different sort of, like, role playing or LARPing or cosplaying or whatever. And it's like police woman, nurse, schoolgirl. That's sort of the three. And it's like, oh, what a strange set, you know what I mean? So you have, like, the authoritative set, you have, like, the carer, and then you just have, like, the impressionable. I don't know what you would call the last one. I don't know where that three come from.
The schoolgirl and porn thing, it's so weird because it's so close to, like, pedophilia, but it's allowable in, like, porn culture. Like,
I never connected it until recently when I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, because I remember listening to some podcast somewhere.
It's like, you know, is it hot because it's just a woman with, like, obviously a short skirt on, or is it hot because you're imagining that the woman is, like, 20 years younger? Like,
I would argue that it's because it's, like, the signifiers of, like, purity and, like, God and stuff. Like, I don't know whether or not it has to do with the age of the person, but it has to do with the uniform. The uniform tells you, you know, like, but then sin.
Are pedophiles attracted to age or purity? Like, or
that's a good question. I don't think that, I have no idea what pedophiles are attracted to, but I'm led to believe, after watching, like, that Louis Theroux documentary where he goes to, like, a sort of, like, I don't even know what it is. It's like a prison, like, but it's not a prison.
Is it a really twisted, like, desire for the pure?
Well, it's sort of strange. I don't really know whether or not this is, like, the truth of the matter of the case at hand, or whether or not it's just, like, pedophiles trying to make things seem a little bit more out of their control. But it's like, it seems like they really believe that the kids are attracted to them. Like, they're like, yeah, they wanted me to do this. Like, we were at the park, I saw that the kid look at me in a certain way, and it's just like, whoa, like, you really think that, like, this kid's sending you some sort of signal? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's always the case. I think sometimes it's just a power thing as well, but, like, the school one, I think there's something about like Catholic schoolgirls. It seems like that was just eroticized for some reason.
Yeah, it's a concept
actually, you
in
know
a lot
what?
of
I think
art and films and music and stuff.
I think now that I think about it as well, it's like it's almost like the Catholic schoolgirl is like the perfect battleground for the difference between like an instituted form of rule or law in the form of like Bible doctrine or whatever, and like the sexual body of the woman as she like develops from like girl to woman. And so like it's an internal battle for them as well, you know, like seems like women are usually cast as something like sort of outside of the rule of Christian law, right? Like they're kind of like the temptresses, or like, you know what I mean? Like it's a real, like, have you seen, what's that movie, Carrie? Yeah, Carrie, the one where she has like the pig's blood and stuff, like, and at some point in the film she's like masturbating with like a crucifix, and she gets her period and the blood goes over it. Pretty fucking nuts. But that's what I mean, like, you know, you're real like the sexual body of the woman is just like such a terrifying thing to see for the Catholic law.
How do we get on this tangent?
We're
talking about Christianity.
Christian schools, so, not like, well, they're banning stuff or not banning stuff.
I still don't fully see, like, maybe it's just because Christians don't like stuff that, I mean, because it does, the book or the film, it doesn't pose any direct challenge to Christian thought. Like, there's nothing direct about it, but maybe it's just because like they like to censor stuff that is like a bit intense. Yeah. Because the main criticisms seem like they're philosophical in nature. So it got criticized for being a quietist work. Are you familiar with quietist philosophy?
No, what's that?
It's sort of related to pacifism, I guess.
Right.
And so
okay.
it was
I reckon
criticized
that's true.
for. Yeah, it says Vonnegut deprecates any attempt to see tragedy that day in Dresden. He likes to say, with arch fatalism, citing one horror after another, so it goes. As in, like, they're misinterpreting what he's saying.
I think I agree.
Say, like,
I agree with that
cares?
criticism. I think that's exactly the sort of thing that I received from this film.
But if you read his other books and get an idea for his stance on politics and the world, I think it's more like he's more trying to sympathise with almost the desensitization that happens to prisoners of war and people that have seen such horrible things. Like, he's trying to emphasize how desensitized they become from, if you've just seen so much horror and stuff that you can't even like contemplate the immorality and the pain and suffering. So you're just like, so it goes. It's just like another person died. Oh, I'll add that to the 1,000 people I've already seen dead. Like, they can't handle anymore. But it's still a sad statement. It's not like a brush off. It's not like, it's not saying it doesn't matter. He's just trying to reflect that point of view of someone that is like, you know, they've seen so much that they're, and it comes up with Billy's character in that, like, well, I think it's a good point for this case when she asks him to talk about, like, I think it's at his wedding, maybe he's at his house anyway, or he's getting an award or something. Daughter's wedding, I don't know, but she asked him to tell a story, and he kind of walks away. She's like, "Who's that friend that died?" And he says his name.
It's at his anniversary, I think.
It's very typical of, like,
and he gives her a diamond or something.
Yeah.
Anniversary,
and it's very typical of people who have experienced like actual war, and they're like, I don't want to talk about it like with your happy family friends. Like, it's just like, like, that's a horrible time.
I think that it certainly could be the case. Like, it could be the case that, like, just like, I don't remember this fondly, or like the distance that they had, the people that weren't in the war had, so they can kind of talk about it as like, we had a war, and now we don't have a war.
I guess, like, to me, that gels more closely with, like, Kurt's standing on things like that. Like, he fully acknowledges, like, horrible things in the world. And so it's almost like he turns to sci-fi concepts and stuff to kind of try and rise above, like, terrible Earth stuff. And just, like, to remind people, like, universe, not, you know, just like, we don't even understand existence and stuff. Like, he's very existential in his writing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that criticism is pretty warranted.
Maybe I'm too much of a Kurt fan.
I don't mind Kurt Vonnegut's writing, but I think in the Sirens of Titan as well, he does the same thing. Like, all these sets of events happen, and then at the end, it's just like, yeah, we kind of had to be here. Like, this is like determined. So I think that like it does certainly have a ring of like hands-offness to it. That there's no sense in like political activity or anything. Like, you just live your life in the set of circumstances that you've been placed in. But that might also not be the case. You know, it's worth reading it a whole bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
What other criticisms do we got here?
That was the main one.
That was the main one?
Yeah, that was like, it's sort of a mishmash in there. But I think we covered it pretty well. I think I'm good. See also four-dimensionalism.
What is that? Click that.
Look, I got a whole list of see also tabs going on up here. I got a lot of reading to do, man.
Temporal parts is an ontological position.
Okay, so that's basically the Tralfamadorian's point of view.
Yeah. The object's persistence through
Eternalism.
time is like its extension through space. Thus, an object that exists in time has temporal parts in the various subregions of the total.
Anyway, your closing thoughts on Slaughthouse 5.
I think I'll give it the same response that I gave Soil and Green, which is the end is worth watching the film. I think
I hated the ending though.
Oh, you hated the ending?
Well, I just thought it was just seemed boring. Like,
it
was nice.
I liked the like fireworks and stuff. Like,
yeah.
I thought it was funny. I thought like I love this scene here. Like,
it felt really cheesy for me. I don't
it's
know.
certainly cheesy. Yeah,
the dome is cool, and you know it's done all right, but
yeah.
Explain. Yeah, what? They're like cheering and stuff.
Yeah, I think I don't know. There's just something about it. Like, that's what nails down the sex is the entertainment. Them living in it is the entertainment for the other beings, because like, why else would they be cheering and clapping and like fireworks and stuff? It's just like kind of like fanfare. It's like, yeah, you did it finally.
Yeah,
like, it's like a TV closing.
Yeah, well, yeah, they make that very clear, because it's like she's in her element, sort of like she's in a reality TV show for like aliens.
Yeah, being naked.
Yeah.
But
I think it's also worth saying that Kurt said he loved the movie. He thought it was an awesome adaptation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he was a huge fan of it. They did really nail the character of Billy, because I read the book a few years ago before watching the film and felt that it was accurate.
Yeah, I think it's a good adaptation. You know, there's a lot of bad adaptations. So this does good.
Yeah,
I think it's a well done adaptation.
I guess it's worth giving them some credit, because there's so many bad ones. It's like,
there's lots of bad.
We'll put this on the tally, the slim tally of films that did well.
Yeah, I think it's very hard to adapt a science fiction novel into a film.
For sure. That's why Dune's fucked. All the Asimov books never been done. Like, there's lots of examples. Yeah,
that's true. But then, you know, another good one for the pro tally, Blade Runner. You know, that's Philip K. Dick's like "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?"
Oh, that's right. Okay,
Yeah.
Have you read it?
Yeah, I got the copy if you want to borrow it.
And it's done. Okay, yeah.
I think it's a little bit different. There are some big differences, but the differences don't detract from the story itself. I think it's good.
Okay, I actually might be keen on that before I watch it, so I'll try and smash through that, because Okay, well, next week we'll be doing Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner.
Oh yeah.
And then maybe in the future the newer Blade Runner.
That'd be lit. We should do the Manchurian Candidate at some point as well.
Yes.
Crazy. Yeah.
We've got a long list.
Yeah.
Lots to look forward to.
What's your final point?
Okay.
What's your takeaway? What do you rate it? Did you hate it? Did you love it?
I loved it. I gotta find, because I've been liking all of them so far a bit too much, but I don't know. I think we have been cherry picking, so that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
I would say, because I'd seen it before, and
You'd seen this before?
Yeah.
Okay.
I liked it more this time. Like, I forgot how much I liked it. I can't remember. There was a certain point when I was in the film and I was like... Oh, I think it was some of the scenes with the dog.
Spot.
Yeah, made me just be like... Yeah, I like the... when he kind of just goes outside. He's like... There's that party at his house and he's just like... Yeah, whatever. And just walks outside and hangs out with the dog.
Spot pisses on his wife.
Yeah.
And then... Just like, no, you're alright.
Yeah, they did use the kind of...
There was a slapstickiness to it.
They made the wife very stereotypical, and I found that kind of funny. But no, I thought it was a great film and a great story.
Yeah.
But
would you recommend it to somebody?
Absolutely, I recommend. Well, like everyone should watch all of these films because it's just. I don't know. You got to arm yourself with some sci-fi concepts.
We're doing it so you don't have to.
Yeah,
we're like the Jesus of.
Oh yeah, because he's so much shorter than fucking watching it.
But yeah. So okay, I guess maybe
it's nice to be armed with sci-fi analogies, so that when you reflect upon the real world, to check the balance sheet of like. Just is life getting too nasty? You can be like, hey, that's something they did in Brazil. Whoa.
Yeah, exactly. When the fictions of life get too real, I'm just like,
it makes it more fun. It's like we live in a movie because in a way we do.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, like in the way that we all fictionalize our own lives, but also like, and
as a coping mechanism, if things start getting shit, at least we can remind ourselves that they were also shit in movies.
Yeah, that's the imaginary working on the symbolic right there, right? Whenever you get a little taste of the real, you're just like, oh, too much. But what would you rate it out of like 5? So, right.
Are we doing out of 10s or out of 5s?
I think 5 is better, but if
do
you
we
like
have half stars?
Yeah, sure. But if you like, but if you want 10 because it's more of an even than an odd thing, then yeah, go for it.
Let's do out of 100, just to fully escape the decimal system.
Okay.
What's 100? Is there?
There might not be.
What's your favorite?
There might not be 100. There might not be a 100.
Is there a 0?
No, everything floats between those 2 points. You can never reach
everything. I guess would float between like 50 and 90.
I reckon everything would float between 30 and 80.
I guess you got to be careful. Okay, you can give 100 to your favorite film, but it's even you don't have to have one because maybe your favorite film hasn't come out yet.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think that with science fiction, a lot of like the stuff that like makes it not the best movie is good for science fiction though. Like some of the stuff, it's like, oh, that was odd. Maybe they shouldn't have done it, but like,
why don't we just rate them in relation to the other ones we've done so far?
Okay.
So I would put it above Soylent Green,
but below Brazil.
But below Brazil.
Yeah, exactly. I would do the exact same.
Sweet. And that list will get... It'll be cool because it will
we'll have a spectrum. We'll see like where things move around. But totally. It doesn't really hold a light. It doesn't really hold a candle up to Brazil for me.
Oh, well, okay. It's going to be the Battle of Brazil and Blade Runner, I think.
Yeah.
It's going to be a close call.
That's going to be a big one for me. That's going to that'll really tear me apart.
Brazil got me by the balls. Like that. This score, I was like, I'm in love.
I mean, out of these 3 films, Soylent Green is definitely the worst. Like, there's no arguing that.
Poor Soylent Green.
Yeah. It's not that it's a bad film. It's just its peers exceed it.
No, that's okay. They did what they could with what they had. All right, that's a wrap.
Hey, peace. Take care.
Love you.